It is 3 in the morning. The room is dark. The house is quiet. Everything around you has stopped. But inside your head, something has started. A conversation you had 6 years ago replays in full detail, except this time your brain has rewritten your lines to be worse. A decision you made last week is now being audited by a committee of imaginary critics who all agree you chose wrong. A problem you cannot solve during the day has become, in the dark, a catastrophe that will definitely destroy everything. You are not choosing to think about this. You did not schedule a performance review with your own failures at 3 in the morning. Your brain initiated this session without your permission, and it will not stop when you ask it to. Telling yourself to stop thinking is, in this state, roughly as effective as telling yourself to stop breathing. The instruction does not reach the part of the brain that is running the process. This is not insomnia. This is not anxiety in the clinical sense, although it can feed both. This is a specific neurological event that happens when the brain's daytime management system goes offline, and the system that replaces it has a very different set of priorities. This is the science of why your brain overthinks at night. And once you understand the mechanism, the 3 a.m. spiral stops feeling like a personal failing and starts looking like a design flaw operating exactly as expected. Let's start with what changes in your brain when the sun goes down. During the day, your prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center, is active and dominant. It is the region responsible for rational evaluation, emotional regulation, planning, and impulse control. When a negative thought arises during the day, the prefrontal cortex can assess it, contextualize it, and often dismiss it. That email probably was not hostile. That comment probably was not about you. That problem probably has a solution you have not found yet. The prefrontal cortex applies brakes to catastrophic thinking, but the prefrontal cortex has a schedule. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker at the University of California, Berkeley, whose research on sleep has reshaped the field, has documented that prefrontal cortex activity decreases significantly as the body prepares for sleep and during the early stages of sleep pressure. The executive controller does not go offline all at once. It fades. And as it fades, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection and emotional processing center, becomes proportionally more dominant. Walker's research showed that after sleep deprivation, amygdala reactivity to negative emotional stimuli increased by roughly 60%. 60%. The brake was removed and the accelerator was pressed at the same time. But you do not need to be sleep deprived for this shift to occur. It begins every evening as part of the brain's normal transition towards sleep. The later it gets, the weaker the prefrontal cortex becomes and the louder the amygdala gets. This is why the same problem that felt manageable at 2 in the afternoon feels catastrophic at 2 in the morning. The problem did not change. The brain processing it changed. The rational evaluator went home for the night and the threat detector took over the shift. But the amygdala is only half the equation. The other half involves a system you have heard about in a previous video, but never in this context. The default mode network. Researcher Marcus Reichel at Washington University in St. Louis discovered the default mode network in 2001. It is a constellation of brain regions that activate when you are not focused on an external task, when your mind is wandering, daydreaming, or simply not engaged with the outside world. During the day, the default mode network serves important functions. It consolidates memories. It processes social information. It helps you plan for the future and make sense of the past. But at night, when external stimulation drops to near zero, the default mode network does not just activate. It dominates. There is nothing else competing for the brain's attention. No tasks, no conversations, no visual input. The default mode network fills the entire cognitive space, and its primary activity in the absence of external input is self-referential processing. It thinks about you, your past, your mistakes, your unresolved problems, your relationships, your fears. This is the neurological origin of the 3 a.m. thought spiral. The default mode network is doing its job, processing self-relevant information. The prefrontal cortex, which would normally regulate the emotional intensity of that processing, is offline. And the amygdala, which tags information with emotional significance, is running hot. The result is a perfect storm. Unrestricted self-focused thinking amplified emotional intensity, and no rational break to stop it. Researcher Ami Shalav at Yale University studied rumination, the clinical term for repetitive, unproductive negative thinking, and found that ruminative episodes are strongly associated with increased default mode network activity and decreased prefrontal cortex engagement. The pattern is not random, it is a predictable consequence of the brain's architecture when executive control is low and self-referential processing is high, and the content of nighttime rumination is not random either. Clinical psychologist Susan Nolen-Hoeksema at Yale, who spent her career studying rumination before her death in 2013, found that rumination consistently focuses on three themes: perceived failures, unresolved threats, and social evaluation. These are not arbitrary topics. They are the exact categories that the amygdala is built to prioritize: threats to status, threats to safety, threats to belonging. During the day, the prefrontal cortex can evaluate these threats and often determine that they are manageable or imaginary. At night, the evaluation system is down and the threat tagging system runs unchecked. This is why the embarrassing thing you said in 2017 resurfaces at 3 in the morning with the emotional intensity of something that happened today. The amygdala does not timestamp its threats. It does not distinguish between a present danger and a past regret. It flags anything that was emotionally significant, regardless of when it happened, and in the absence of the prefrontal cortex saying, "That was years ago, it does not matter," the emotional signal plays at full volume. There is a physiological layer to this that makes the pattern even harder to break. Researcher Sonia Lupien at the University of Montreal has studied the relationship between cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, and nighttime cognition. Cortisol follows a circadian rhythm, typically lowest around midnight and highest in the early morning. But in people experiencing chronic stress, this rhythm is disrupted. Cortisol levels remain elevated at night, which keeps the amygdala primed and the body in a state of low-grade alertness that is incompatible with sleep. The overthinking and the stress response feed each other. The rumination activates the stress system. The stress system keeps the brain alert. The alert brain continues ruminating, and the cycle can run for hours because there is no external event to interrupt it. During the day, the phone rings. Someone speaks to you. You arrive at a destination. External events naturally break the loop. At 3 in the morning, there is nothing. Just you and the dark, and a brain that has decided now is the perfect time to review everything that has ever gone wrong. So what does the science say actually works? The most counterintuitive finding is that trying to stop the thoughts makes them worse. Researcher Daniel Wegner at Harvard University demonstrated this in his famous white bear experiment. When people are told not to think about a white bear, they think about it more. The instruction to suppress a thought requires monitoring for the thought, and monitoring for the thought keeps it active. Telling yourself to stop overthinking is itself a form of overthinking. What works instead is redirection, not suppression. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, the most evidence-based treatment for nighttime rumination, uses a technique called constructive worry. You set aside 10 minutes earlier in the evening to write down every worry. Not to solve them, to externalize them, to move them from working memory, where they loop, onto paper, where they are static. The brain treats externalized information differently from internalized information. Once it is written down, the default mode network is less likely to keep recycling it, because the brain registers that the information has been stored somewhere accessible. Researcher Alison Harvey at the University of Oxford found that people who engaged in constructive worry before bed fell asleep significantly faster and reported fewer intrusive thoughts during the night. The thoughts did not disappear. They lost their urgency because the brain no longer needed to keep them active to prevent them from being forgotten. The second intervention targets the physiological layer. Researcher Andrew Huberman at Stanford University has documented that specific breathing patterns, particularly the physiological sigh, a double inhale through the nose followed by a long exhale through the mouth, activates the parasympathetic nervous system and reduces amygdala reactivity in real time. This is not meditation. It is a mechanical intervention that shifts the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems within seconds. The third is environmental. The brain processes darkness and silence as conditions in which vigilance is required. Because for most of human evolutionary history, darkness meant vulnerability. Removing total darkness with a dim, warm light, or replacing silence with low-level consistent sound can reduce the amygdala's baseline alertness and make the default mode network self-referential processing less emotionally charged. It is 3 in the morning. The room is dark. And your brain has started a conversation you did not ask for. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are experiencing the predictable result of a prefrontal cortex that has gone offline, an amygdala that has taken over, and a default mode network that has nothing to think about except you. The spiral is not a choice. It is a circuit. And circuits do not respond to willpower. They respond to design. The thoughts will come. They always do. The question is not how to stop them. It is whether you will build an evening that takes the fuel away before the fire starts. 3 in the morning is not when your brain fails you. It is when your brain reveals what it does when no one is steering. And what it does, left to its own devices, is exactly what it was built to do: scan for threats in the dark. The only problem is that the threats it finds are not outside the window. They are inside your head. And they have been there all day waiting for the guard to leave. The guard is your prefrontal cortex. It kept them quiet for 16 hours. It evaluated them, contextualized them, filed them away. And then it clocked out, the way it does every night, and left the amygdala in charge of a brain with nothing to do and everything to worry about. You did not fail tonight. Your guard just went home. And tomorrow, when it comes back, every one of these problems will shrink back to the size it actually is. The 3 a.m. version was never the real one. It was the version your brain creates when the lights go out and the only thing left to scan for danger is you. Write it down. Breathe out. And let the guard come back in the morning. It always does.